Good evening, I'm Soraya Mia and this is AWANI Tonight. Malaysia's CPI drops again. How to step up pressure on anti-corruption fight. And Malaysia maintains stand on Myanmar. Only non-political reps for ASEAN meetings. More on that coming up. The government is planning to further relax the Standard Operating Procedures SOPs once the administration of COVID-19 booster doses is completed. Prime Minister Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob said the matter will depend on recommendations and advice from the Ministry of Health. He added that if the SOPs were too rigid, it would definitely affect the national tourism industry. Although the domestic tourism sector had been reopened, he said foreign tourists had yet to be allowed to enter the country, and wage subsidy was still being given to tourism industry players. The Prime Minister said some countries had also relaxed their SOPs for foreign tourists, and that was something for Malaysia to consider. Despite all that, Ismail Sabri said that right now the government was still being cautious in reopening the country's borders following concerns of COVID-19 infection. He said even though the Malaysia-Singapore Vaccination Travel Lane VTL initiative had kicked off and the VTL discussions with Indonesia and Thailand had been initiated, the increasing number of COVID-19 cases overseas still caused Malaysia to suspend international travel. Ismail Sabri spoke to his Cambodian counterpart Hun Sen today in a video call. He reaffirmed Malaysia's support for Cambodia as chair of ASEAN, but underscored that Putrajaya's position on Myanmar remained unchanged.
Malaysia's position, he said, is to invite only non-political representatives from Myanmar to ASEAN's high-level meetings, unless there is real progress in the implementation of the 5-point consensus, a peace plan agreed to by the junta last year. During the meeting, Sabri also voiced issues concerning Myanmar, including the urgent need to de-escalate the situation in the troubled member state. The PM said he wants to see violence against civilians and urged for the release all political prisoners in Myanmar, such as Aung San Suu Kyi. Malaysia's score in the Annual Corruption Perception Index, or CPI, has fallen for the second time in a row. It dropped 3 points from last year's report, pushing the score below the 50-point mark. The 2021 CPI was released by Transparency International Malaysia, showing the country's score is now 48 compared to 51 in the previous year and 53 points in 2019. The deterioration of the score is reflected in Malaysia's ranking, which dropped to the 62nd spot from 57th in 2020.
So you can see from 2021, we have dropped 5 points in 3 years. So from 2019 until 2021, we have dropped 5 points. Now, some may say, oh, only 5 points. No, actually, the 5 points is very, very serious. It's very, very significant when we have a 5-point drop. So this is something that we need to look at very seriously.
Among the region, Malaysia appears to be doing well, falling behind only Singapore, which is at 4th place this year, where it tied with Norway and Sweden. Singapore is also the only Asian country to make it onto the top 10 on the CPI. They are behind Denmark, Finland, and New Zealand, which tied for first place. The 2021 CPI indicates that Malaysia is not progressing enough in ensuring the fight against corruption is top priority. We speak to Sudagaran Stanley from Centre to Combat Corruption and Cronyism C4 on speeding up anti-corruption reforms and how the public can contribute in the process.
This can be mainly attributed to the fact that we are actually downtracking on many of the reforms that the government has actually promised throughout the past years and so on. You see, in 2019, Saraya, the government back then had come out with this National Anti-Corruption Plan. And the National Anti-Corruption Plan, the NACP, is a comprehensive document, a plan, initiative or strategy, whatever you call it, that addresses corruption in this country. Now, it was to be implemented from 2019 up to 2023. That means it gives us a 5-year implementation period.
The NACP, he said, focuses on 5 main issues regarding combating corruption in Malaysia, including political finance governance, separation of powers such as the Attorney General and Public Prosecutor, police accountability, and reforms to the MACC.
It talks about the appointment of the Chief Commissioner. It mentions about empowering the agency in terms of the appointment of the Chief Commissioner. It talks about budget allocations. It talks about having an oversight committee and the establishment of the Service Commission and the manpower as well. And today, we see a huge problem in the way the MACC share trading issue, has been dealt with. And it also does not help, when the chief himself is not setting the examples right. He refuses to appear before the Parliamentary Select Committee. He goes after whistleblowers. Now, what is the message that we are sending here? Instead of coming down hard, the government, and to ensure that the entire investigations are conducted transparently, and that all questions are answered, they seem not to be taking the matter seriously.
Stanley said one way for the public to contribute in fighting corruption is to hold elected MPs accountable.
And one way for that is to hold their MPs accountable. They should text their MPs and tell their MPs to make sure that the NACP is implemented. Those who support the opposition, make sure that their MPs bring up the issue in Parliament, and those that support the government, make sure that the government actually implements the plan. So this is one way how the public can actually take part in, holding the government or their MPs accountable to actually implement the NACP.
In other news, national badminton men's singles ace Lee Zijia has been granted his wish to become a professional player. Badminton Association of Malaysia, BAM President Tan Sri Muhammad Norza Zakaria confirmed he had met with the athlete and gave his blessings. Thus, the current world number 7 said he will represent Malaysia at the Badminton Asia Team Championship 2022 to be held in Selangor in mid-February. The tournament will also serve as a qualifiers for the Thomas Cup and Uber Cup finals. In a Facebook post, the Kedahan thanked Norza and BAM and urged everyone to continue to support BAM as well as the country's professional players. Zijia had submitted an appeal against his 2-year suspension by BAM for quitting the national body. Meanwhile, with the Johor state elections looming, most major parties will be eyeing a significant haul of the seats. How will Perikatan Nasional, led by Bersatu, fare? We asked political analyst, Associate Professor Dr. Hamidin Hamid.
As far as Bersatu is concerned, the party may be able to gain more share of the vote due to current fragmented political landscape. However, Dr. Hamidin was not sure if the support may translate to seats in the Johor state elections.
Looking at the current situation, obviously, I think Bersatu will gain more popular support compared to previously what they get during the PRU. And however, to what extent they can maintain the seat, I think is still a big challenge for Bersatu. Obviously, I think for the Malays who were voting for PH before, I think the best solution for them, or most of them, will choose Bersatu as what happened that's what happened in Malacca. But at the same time, I think definitely Bersatu will lose some of the supporters that support them in January 14, which will return back to UMNO. So with that, I think it's going to be a very tough for Bersatu. I don't expect Bersatu can win as much or as many seats as they have during the PRU 2018.
Despite political fatigue, Johor's State Assembly was dissolved. Were the reasons purely local? Tonight on Consider This, we ask our guests about the dynamics of the upcoming elections. We'll go for a quick break. We'll be right back.
Selamat datang ke Yang Mana Satu Idaman You. Jika anda ada RM109, mana satu yang anda mahu? 90 saluran Astro atau internet laju? Persoalannya, kenapa you kena pilih kalau semuanya ada dengan bundle jimat, internet laju dan 90 saluran Astro hanya RM109 sebulan sahaja? Kan? Call 03-7481-3000 sebelum promosi habis.
Welcome back. U.S. President Joe Biden says Western leaders are united on deterring Russia from an attack against Ukraine. Pentagon said 8,500 U.S. troops have been put on standby for possible deployment to boost NATO's presence in Eastern Europe amid escalating tensions with Russia.
Biden held a video call with European allies as Western powers aim for a common strategy against Russia's actions. Joining the call were the leaders of UK, France, Germany, Italy, Poland, and the EU. The UK has warned Russia of unprecedented sanctions if an incursion takes place. Russia has denied plans to invade Ukraine, but over the last few months, the Kremlin had amassed some 100,000 soldiers at Ukraine's borders. US and UK have started withdrawing families of embassy staffs in Ukraine over concerns of a Russian invasion. Pentagon said US troops are on high alert and would only be deployed if the NATO military alliance decides to activate a rapid reaction force.
At least 9 people died after a fire broke out in a nightclub in Indonesia's West Papua province. 2 groups clashed inside the building prior to the blaze. Police are still investigating if the fire was intentional or accidental.
The clash broke out inside the nightclub in Sorong City at 11 p.m. Monday. According to authorities, 1 victim was stabbed while the rest died in the blaze. Indonesia's National Police said the brawl, which started on Saturday, was between 2 rival youth gangs because of a misunderstanding. Police said machetes and arrows were also used when the 2 groups attacked each other.
Meanwhile, at least 8 people were killed and 50 more injured in a stampede at a football game in Cameroon. The crush occurred as fans attempted to enter the stadium to watch the Africa Cup of Nations match between Cameroon and Comoros. Chaotic scenes were seen outside the entry gates as thousands of fans struggled to get access. According to officials, 1 child was killed in the stampede. The stadium has a capacity of 60,000, but because of COVID restrictions, it was not meant to be more than 80% full for the game. Match officials were quoted as saying that some 50,000 people were trying to attend. Thailand Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha is on a 2-day visit to Saudi Arabia, the first visit by a Thai leader in more than 30 years. This is following decades of diplomatic tensions sparked by a jewel theft from a Saudi palace in 1989, widely dubbed as the Blue Diamond Affair.
Almost 30 years ago, a Thai janitor stole $20 million worth of precious gems from the home of a Saudi prince, triggering a feud between the countries that has yet to be resolved. Thai police later returned some of the jewels, but Saudi officials claimed most were fakes. And the whereabouts of the most precious gem, a rare 50-carat blue diamond, remains unknown. A year after the theft, 3 Saudi diplomats in Thailand were killed in 3 separate assassinations in a single night. Saudi Arabia has not sent an ambassador to Thailand for decades and restricts travel between the countries. This until last Sunday, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman sent an invitation to Prayut for a visit aimed at strengthening and promoting bilateral ties.
Flights in Istanbul were suspended for a second day, while private vehicles were barred from streets as heavy snowfall brought the city to a standstill. A rare snowstorm has hit Turkey and parts of eastern Mediterranean region, causing blackout and massive disruptions.
The closure of Istanbul airport, where the roof of one of the cargo terminals collapsed under heavy snow, grounded flights stretching from the Middle East and Africa to Europe and Asia. While in Athens, Greece schools and vaccination centers were forced to close due to heavy snow. Emergency teams are cleaning up streets in Istanbul, while many public workers were granted administrative leave to keep commutes to a minimum. The city of 16 million people stood effectively still because of orders for drivers to stay off the streets.
That's all we have for you on AWANI tonight. My name is Sarah Mia. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.